So, failure teaches you way more than success ever will because it stings and it burns. And man, do you reflect on failure more than success? I would have done a ton of things differently.
You're an inspiration to our entire organization.
Welcome to the Gym Marketing Made Simple podcast. We're going to be talking the done-for-you marketing and sales strategies proven to work with boutique fitness gyms to increase quality lead flow and grow your revenue. Don't try to be a professional marketer and waste tons of money. Let the experts at Lasso do it for you. And now, here are your hosts, Blake Ruff and Sherman Merricks.
All right, guys, here we go. Another episode of Gym Marketing Made Simple. I'm here with Blake. We have Josh, and we have our guy, the Brian Alexander. Brian, thanks for hanging out with us.
Yes, sir. I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely, man. So, longtime affiliate owner, got out of the game. Now he does some cool stuff. Brian, just give a quick little intro on yourself for someone that has never heard of the Brian Alexander.
Wow. I was born in 1980 in a small town in Illinois. No, I'm just kidding. Most of my life I've been in sales. Had a very lucrative sales career from 2006 until about 2012 or so. Did really well there, making a boatload of money, and just realized I didn't want to be another cog in a wheel of a Fortune 30 company, and ended up opening my own CrossFit gym back in 2011, 2012. And ended up, loving that, doing pretty well with that, coaching gyms, mentoring gyms. I was one of the more innovative gym owners. I loved using my gym as a sandbox for new ideas. But ultimately, end of the day, ended up wanting to work with larger companies, right? And wanting to do a little bit something else. I fell in love with coaching. I fell in love with the people side of the business. So even if you have great SOPs and all the systems and processes in the world, I recognized if you don't have the right people in the right seats, it was almost all for naught. So use that experience to begin working with larger companies. And now I am a business guy that employs some of the best frameworks in the world: Pinnacle Business Operating System and Predictive Index, which helps companies hire, lead, develop people based on behavioral data.
Got you. So, some of you guys may not know Brian. He's been we've known Brian before Lasso started, and then he's one of the guys we reached out to with first. Brian actually, little known fact, Brian actually came up with the name. Blake and I trying to figure out a name and reach out to Brian. We know he thinks like that. And we're like, man, we're trying to think of a name, and we had a couple things. And he was like, what about Lasso? I'm just like, what, bro? Like, he was like, yeah, this is what it stands for. I was like, all right, here we go. Let's just do it. We wasted enough time on this. So that's pretty cool. So Brian's been there from the beginning. He's he's like our business coach, been along for the ride from the beginning, seeing the ups, the downs, the growth, all of that stuff with us. So, Brian, let's talk a little bit about how you help us specifically, because I think that'll give people sort of a better idea of what you really do. Because I remember in the beginning when you were even telling me, I was like I know, like, and trust you, so I'm gonna do it, but I don't know exactly what we're signing up for. But we signed
Yep.
up, and I'm glad we did. So, let's talk a little bit about how you help us specifically.
Yeah. So, businesses are easy to run, very difficult to run well, right? What I do is I come alongside the business owners. If they don't have a leadership team, I help them build one. If they do have a leadership team, I help them align their leadership team around clear goals, clear objectives. We call them rocks. You could work on 50 things at any given time in a business, but how do you know which, like, 3 to 5 are important right now and are actually going to yield results aligned with what you're trying to accomplish? That's where most business owners get a little hung up on, right? They're busy. There's a lot of action, a lot of activity, which isn't bad, but you can waste a lot of time by not understanding the right things to work on at the right time. And then when you add layers of leadership underneath you, now it's not just this business owner executing. Now that business owner has to figure out, how do I get this team firing on all cylinders? How do I make sure they're working on the right things at the right time? And that's really where people get a lot more traction, and you can scale and grow a lot faster. But beyond just scaling and growing a lot faster, just kind of like have a business that can manage itself without you wanting to yank your hair out. And Sherman, you've clearly done that. And Josh, you've clearly done that as well because you have no hair. We're going to avoid that. So actually, within a few years, your hair will begin growing back once we get everything aligned.
No, that's technically not true, because I think I had more hair when we first started working together,
That's right.
and
That's
things
right.
have gotten better. So it's got, yeah. But nevertheless, I think, for me, um, you do so much. But one of the biggest things that I've enjoyed sort of learning from you and just getting help with is our hiring process, right? Like, that's one of the things that is sort of overlooked and not taken as serious when you're bringing people on, especially when you're growing something. You're like, oh, I just need someone to do this. Oh, yeah, such and such would be good, specifically in the gym industry. But we've seen this time and time again where if you put the right people in the wrong seat, it
Yeah.
still ends bad, right? So I've loved the way that we basically fill out that job description and all of that stuff. So sort of walk them through that hiring process specifically that you do with us, so they can sort of understand what it looks like.
Yeah. So this is where it gets really interesting. Just because there's a title for a role doesn't mean that that role is the same across every company or every organization. Even if it's within a gym, like one specific role in a startup phase versus that same role title in a business that's doing $1.5 million a year is different, right? So you can't just use this cookie cutter, like, here's my GM template and here's my social media template. There's some commonalities around that, but it's very unique to the stage and phase of business that is that the company's in, really. And we help you build what we call a job target from the ground up. So from a behavior perspective, I like to think about it like this. You have a point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and center. They all have unique attributes that allow them to play their position well. But what happens if you take them off the court and you put the point guard at center and the shooting guard at power forward? They're all going to be playing the same game of basketball, but now that point guard is going to be highly ineffective in the center role. Fans are going to be upset. Coaches are going to be upset. So you might have the right person, but that person's in the wrong seat. Imagine Michael Jordan playing center his whole life. He probably wouldn't be Michael Jordan at this
Or
point.
imagine Michael Jordan playing baseball, sort of like Blake's son. Like, Blake's son is a phenomenal basketball player. He's young, but Blake wants him to play baseball for some reason. And yeah, I get it. I
Michael
get it.
Jordan did play baseball, actually. That
And
was
he
a
was
bad
horrible.
analogy.
He was horrible. He was horrible.
And
And so
my son played against 4 and 5-year-old when he's 6, so he did look a lot better than what he was.
we
Kids were
get
scooting on the ground on their butt compared to what he was doing, so the competition level wasn't quite there.
so back to the point. This is what our 8-hour sessions end up being too. So you get an inside look. But look, the point guard could play center, right? Like a rubber band, he can stretch under constant tension, energy, and effort. But it's going to take a lot of unnecessary effort just to meet the demands of the role. And eventually, it's either going to break or it's going to snap back to its natural state. So a lot of times, performance problems kind of rear their head because it's not the right person for the right seat. Could be the right person for the company. They're just not in the right seat. So we help companies get really clear on what are the behavioral demands of that role in this stage, in this phase of your business. What do you have them doing behaviorally 80% of their role? we match that up. If we need a point guard, let's just go find a point guard. Let's not try to make a center a good point guard. That's step one. Step two is like getting clear on what the expectations are on the role. Job descriptions are all but obsolete and useless, and that's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. But you can't manage performance around a job description. You can't manage performance around tasks, right? It's just a checklist of things to do. It doesn't help them get clear on what winning looks like. So we help them understand every role. What's the number one goal and objective for the role, right? It's tangible, it's time bound. At on December 31st, as we cross into 2027, they'll know if they hit it, and you'll know if they hit it. Every role needs that. Every role needs 3 obsessions. So we can really only focus on 3 high leverage activities at any given time. So those obsessions are kind of like, imagine the vehicles that are going to help that individual reach that number one goal. So behaviors, right? Less metrics, but more behaviors that will drive toward that number one goal. Then we talk about the win the week scorecard. So we can measure 50 metrics for any given role. But what if we had to really challenge you? Like, there's probably only 3 to 5 that are actually really important to measure weekly that will actually move the needle if we're measuring it 52 weeks a year. And if we're coaching it and we're keeping it front and center, that's going to drive the behavior that's going to help that person hit that number one goal. And then any kind of like core processes they might own and have to update at any given time. And then we really work on like defining what great looks like in a role. Once you have that, then that person has complete clarity around what winning looks like, what the expectations are, what to focus on, and what they can kind of, ignore, because we want to be hyper focused. That person should be hyper focused on doing everything they can to hit that number one goal. So now if you have 5 people in your gym, they all have a number one goal. Those number one goals better all align to meet the gym's end goal, right? So if you want to grow by 30%, you're doing $1 million, you want to hit 1.3 million, guess what? Every single seat's number one goal needs to be aligned with that. If it's a GM, it's going to be operational. Maybe it's more efficiencies. If it's client experience manager, it's going to be all centered around churn. We can't, grow by 30% if we're losing 30% a year as well, right? So we're reducing churn, increasing new members. Every single person's piece plays an integral part. And if everybody hits that number one goal, we're going to grow by our goal. And that's why we really challenge people to set big goals, because it is possible. But it also is a decision-making filter. Growing by 20% every year is nice, but what if we challenge you to say, in 5 years, we want to triple our revenue? Sounds crazy, it sounds outlandish, sounds unattainable, unrealistic. Less important is the number. More important is, if you want to grow by 20% every year, you can probably get there 5 different ways. But if you really want to build a highly effective and efficient company, you say, I'm going to 3x revenue in 5 years, or 4x or 5x. Now you only have like 1 or 2 ways you can get there. So it's a decision filter to say, what am I going to say no to? Everything that doesn't align with that big 5-year pinnacle, we're just going to automatically remove. And it's this clear path to get there. So that's the long story about the role, but getting clear on where you want to go and how you're going to get there over 5 years is almost just as important.
That's good. That's good. That's good. I'm gonna let Josh jump in. Josh, yeah, I'll let you jump in.
Well, honestly, I had a question that I was going to ask you, Brian, but you answered the majority of it, and it was more around, obviously the people who listen to this are gym owners. The event that Sherman will talk about here in a little bit is all going to be, gym owners that are going to be there, and so that's the audience that you're talking to, right? But I don't think a whole lot of people know about the Pinnacle Group that we have within Lasso for our high-level gym owners. And so I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about, you don't got to spill any, secrets, but, really tangibly, like what are some of the challenges that these guys are working through, and then how have you been able to help them, advance their businesses, their gyms?
Yeah. So good question. My world now, generally speaking, revolves around companies doing 5 to 30 million. Good news is it's all the same problems. Different scale, different industry, but it's all the same problems, and everything's built around principles and not tactics, right? So just to rewind back just one step before I get into that, you could easily build a gym using a cookie cutter system that looks like everybody else's gym. And they're telling you exactly what to do and when to do it. It's very prescriptive. That it does work. Um, but really, our goal is to get you to think like you're building your own gym. So the gym owners we want to work with don't want to be a cookie cutter stamp out of 1,000 other gyms, right? They know their culture is unique. They want to build something special. They want a company that's going to be in a category of one and not one of 2,000 cookie cutter gyms. So that's who we want to work with, right? I love all gym owners, but for the Pinnacle Group, this high level group, it's gym owners doing 500, 700, a million or more that want to be in a room of other gym owners that are doing that are at the same level, that want to build a category of one kind of business. They don't want the cookie cutter stuff, right? And the problems we're solving are all around bottlenecks, constraints where they're at within their own businesses. Everyone has different challenges at different stages and phases of their business. The beauty of the group is most of the group has been there and or done that. Or I've done that in larger businesses and companies outside of the industry. But because it's principle based and every business problem can be solved through principles rather than tactics, there is an answer for everything. My goal again, though, is to help people think and learn how to fish on their own. And I'm their guide. I'm not just telling them what to do. I think a good coach tells people what to do. A great coach helps them come to the realization that they have to do what's already in their mind, right? We're extracting that from their mind. If they have a leadership team, even better, because now we're getting way in and buy-in from their leadership team. So long story short, or long way to answer that question is every one of our businesses in the Pinnacle Group is experiencing different challenges and constraints at different times. Whether it's hiring, whether it's high churn, whether it's low lead flow, it could be anything. It could be lack of purpose. One of our gym owners is doing really well and has been for years, over $1 million a year, but he didn't really have like a bigger picture, like nothing driving him, nothing motivating him, not a big enough why. And so he was fighting just to stay stagnant over that $1 million a year marker. And it's interesting because you see the life back in him, because now we've showed him how to think bigger. It was his vision. I didn't inject that vision, but through doing like some of these know your role scorecards, he's actually starting to see how if each one of his team members actually executes on those know your role scorecards, the number one goal and objective, 3 obsessions, win the week scorecard, now he actually sees how he can get to 2 million, right? Whereas before he's like, I just don't want to lose. So he was playing not to lose, not to win, right? And that's not a good place to be in business. Your future has to be brighter than your past as an entrepreneur. And if it's not, that's you're in for a rough ride.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that, with the Pinnacle Group. So the Pinnacle Group, for you guys that don't know, like Brian talked about, sort of our threshold with that, you have to be doing at least 30K per month or more. Just because we're having high level conversations in there. And like it's an exciting place. Uh we meet monthly, and then we meet twice per year in person. And it's a great time just to see, again, gym owners level up, really leveling up, right? We're having a real conversation. We're not talking about Coach Susie not showing up to the 9 a.m. or the 6 a.m. We're having real conversations. How do we go from 30 to 50K per month, or how do we um, open up multi units? With multi units, how are we hiring the right folks so that when I'm on vacation, I'm not getting a phone call and saying, oh, all the things that everyone needs. So, Brian, let's sort of jump into the event, right, that we're going to be having in Nashville. Obviously, you'll be one of the speakers. We're excited about that because I know that there's going to be so many gym owners that's going to take a ton from what you're going to speak on. But uh, you being you've been a gym owner all those years, I believe that the PI, predictive index, really tells us like the things we should and shouldn't do. But one thing that I will say that, taking these, I don't know if they call it a test or whatever they call it, but it really does tell you the things you should and should not be doing. And if you're not confident enough to really just say, okay, I'm going to stay in my lane, like it can be bad for you. 'Cause like you're saying, you should be doing A and B, but you're over here trying to do, L and M. And yeah, you can do it for a little while because we all have to do those things. But we just see too many people, just in general, not only the gym industry, they're doing things that they weren't designed to do. They're never going to be great at it. They may be able to do it for a little bit, but eventually they're going to pop like that rubber band, and then, oh, I'm burnt out. I don't like my career. And when that's really not the case, it's just wrong, right people, wrong seats. So when we're there, if someone said, what would you want someone to get from your your talk? Like if they couldn't make it, like what would you tell them would be a good sort of takeaway from your speech? Because like I love what you do with the hiring stuff. That's my big thing. That's the only reason I keep you around for the hiring, man. We need to hire the right people.
So I would say leadership is all about self-awareness. You can't lead other people unless you can lead yourself first, and you have a hard time leading yourself unless you reflect often and you're self-aware, right? So you have to be aware of not only your own strengths and weaknesses, but also how other people perceive you, right? I was a bad leader before I was a good leader. I was a hard charger. I was going 1,000 miles per hour, and the analogy I used was like, look, I'm going, and I'm going to throw life rafts, and whoever wants to grab one can grab one. But it's not my responsibility or fault if you don't grab one. Leaving people to drown out there, right? Like, that's not the right way to lead people. It's not to expect people to bend around who you are, right? So you do want to understand your strengths and weaknesses, right? But it's not the license to be a jerk about it or to force people to bend around who you are. Really, it's about how do I adapt to meet each one of my individual team members in where they're at, who they are, right? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? How do they like to be communicated to? What are some of their needs in their day-to-day? Are they in the right seat? But you can't do that unless you actually have like some objective data around it, and objective data that is sound and reliable and repeatable, right? There's like 800 assessments on the market. You can Google them, but there's only like a small handful that are scientifically validated for hiring, for selection. But what that really means is the data is stable over a long period of time. PI, it's like 10 years, right? Colby even goes a little further, but those are two of the scientifically validated ones. So first thing I want everyone to come away with, like, let's get crystal clear around your strengths, your blind spots, your weaknesses, what you need, how you best communicate, and then let's layer your team on the people that you're in charge of, the people that you're leading. And once you do that, it's like a bridge of empathy, compassion, better communication. Sherman, Blake is wired the way he is, and it's almost like it's like a caricature in a way. But you also know, and Blake knows, like, hey, Blake is not going to do specific things, and Blake, you know how Sherman's wired. Sherman is not going to do specific things, and it's clear, and the team knows it, right? Josh, you have your own strengths, but building that team around you as a business owner or business owners that complement your strengths and then fill the gaps, that's the right way to do it. Sherman, if you and I partnered in a business, it would be a lot of whiteboards, a lot of ideas, not a whole lot of, execution, a bunch of stuff, 100 projects started to 80%, not one of them over the finish line, right? We'd be kind of butting heads because we like our ideas the best sometimes. So that's not fruitful. Conversely, if Blake partnered with somebody like Blake, there would be some positives and negatives like that too, but not subjectively guessing, not observing and trying to like guess at what people are. Instead of that, let's start with objective data, and then we'll know the behaviors we can expect, and we'll know the needs we can expect. Then to bring it one step further, what is the role need that you're hiring them for, or that they're currently in, and are they in the right seat? That's what I want people to walk away with. It's not, it's behavioral science. It's not rocket science, but once you see it, you can't unsee it.
I agree with that.
One of the funniest things when we're all together that I would like to not try to recreate here, but one of the funniest things that happens when we're all together, especially, not just with the four of us on this call, but also other people from the Lasso team, is we'll be meeting together as a whole group, and we'll be having discussions, and you can quickly point out like, hey, don't forget Blake is a high this and Sherman is a low this, and it really gives a clear window. It's very comical in a way, because then we're all like, oh yeah, I remember that is how Sherman tolerates things and how Blake, executes on things. Can you, I don't want to say like do that on this call, but can you give some of those like more clear examples of like, because you're like, oh yeah, Blake might not do these things, Sherman, but for the people that are listening, and you can use me as the example too, of like, don't put Josh in this role, or don't expect Sherman to know technology because we know he's not going to do that,
Yeah, and it all comes down, like with PI, we measure 4 things. There's 4 drives. There's nerdy, psychometric terminology, but really it's how we value and generate ideas, how we best communicate, the type of work environment that unleashes our full potential or the pace of work, and then how many data points do we need to make a decision. So Sherman is, we'll call him a low D. Low Ds, generally speaking, don't follow rules. They also don't enforce rules. Playbooks and rule books are good guidelines, but I'm not going to follow it to a T. We like a little bit more ambiguity, a little more gray area, but give us an end goal, and don't tell us how to get there, and we're going to get there, right? If we don't, it's our fault. That's fine, but do not micromanage me. Even feedback looks like micromanagement to a low D. Somebody like Blake, incredibly intelligent, just gets a ton of stuff done. He's a big picture thinker, but he's a low B. And low Bs, generally speaking, don't necessarily love communicating with people all day long. So, Blake starts the day with 5 coins, and every social interaction he has, he loses a coin. And then once he's out, he's out.
Sherman, 3 podcasts in a row, and I'm doing all the work on the back end at the same time.
Yeah. And Sherman, on the other hand, he's a high B. He's the opposite of Blake. And Sherman can start the day with 0 coins, and every social interaction he has, he gains a coin. And it's unlimited. So the more, the better. So those are just like 2 little things. And it's just, there's an infinite numbers of examples. Josh, you're actually kind of like an in-between, we call it a facilitator, a mediator. Your Colby's right in the middle. You're not too strongly expressed on the predictive index, so you fill really good gaps. You're a low A, right? So low A's are a lot more collaborative. They seek consensus in decision making. Sherman and Blake are high A's. They're just going to decide and announce and then move on. Josh is going to go work through other people, get their opinions, get a bunch of information, and say, okay, I think this is what we can do. What do you all think? So different style of leadership. There are there is no right style of leadership, by the way. There's an authentic style of leadership based on who you are. A lot of the things with that drive me nuts with like business gurus is they'll tell you, here's how you do everything, right? This is how I did it. You just follow my method and everything I've done, and you should get the results. But that's only right for about 30% of the people, especially if it's like tactics and very specific ways to get there. So, we know behaviorally that person, his system that he designed for himself is probably right for people just like him, but it doesn't really cover the other 60 or 70% of people. You still want to get to the end goal, but now a really good leader is going to say, here's the end goal. Here's how you're wired. Get there the way you're going to get there. I'll create metrics along the way, but you can't give people very specific advice without understanding the person sitting in front of you. Great coaches ask way more questions than they do give answers, and that's kind of what I'll leave you with on that note. I'm a maverick. I'm a big picture thinker. So I can get things done, right? But my way and how I get there is going to be very different than maybe the 15 other reference profiles in Predictive Index. So, the longer I've been doing this for, gosh, like I got into Colby in 2016 and Predictive Index in 2018. So it's, I'm going on like a decade of just a ton of these assessments and thousands of them, and, hundreds of clients. And it's like, the more I know, the less I want to give advice specifically, and the more I want to dig out of people the answers, because I know they're in there and I know how they're wired. So again, I think the mark of a really great coach is doing exactly that.
Yeah, I think we had a Pinnacle meetup in Tampa last year in November, and I think that was one of the things that struck me the most, that I love the most, just being like a coach like through and through, is as I kind of sat there my first time with all of you guys in the room, just watching you just ask questions and facilitate the discussion. And I think you and I were sitting around, just hanging out afterwards. And I was telling you, I was like, man, one of the things that was so fascinating is you never once told somebody, okay, this is the problem. Great. This is what you need to go and implement. Like, so take this, this prescriptive thing and just go do the thing. It was never that at all. And I just thought that was so fascinating to be a part of it, to see how that actually worked. And not only just because it was not because it was different from, so many other things that we've all been a part of over the years, but how effective it was, because I see so many of these people on like a daily basis. So I can still track the impact that those things had from that day,
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's, I want to just solve the problem myself, right? I'll have answers. But again, a great coach has to bite his tongue and help them arrive at those answers themselves. And of course, I'm auditing them and making sure we're headed in what I feel is the right track. But I want it to come from them.
No, that's good. So let's talk about the event a little bit before we get out of here. Now, I'm excited about the entire event, but one of the things, because obviously I love talking to people, I'm excited about us having the little name tags with people's PI on the backside of it, because I get to go up to basically every single person and ask them what their PI is. Uh, that's gonna be great. Brian, so no, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, I was trying to look for my lanyard to see if I had one hanging around from the last event I did, but go for it.
Yeah, no, because again, I don't think many people have taken the PI, so just being able to go around, it's the ultimate icebreaker. You need to get five people's PI, and you just see, we're gonna see who's wired like who. You get the guy like Blake, just leave him alone, man. Just don't talk to him.
Let
We'll
him
put all
cook.
those guys
Get
on
back
one
to him.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll put
It's
all
not sure.
those
You
guys
don't
on
have to
one side.
leave me alone. You can just come talk to me for a little bit, but don't talk to me for an hour.
Yeah. I'm gonna have a little social battery for Blake. He can move it up and down. Like, how much do I have left?
Just leave me alone. I'm good now.
um, Brian, what's if if someone is sort of on the fence about the event, which you well no before we talk about the event, let's talk about your gym a little bit, right? Because like your gym was again, you're a visionary, so your gym was definitely ahead of its time. Just give me a couple things. Give me the size of the gym, how big it was, what type of revenue you were doing, and like what that sort of took out of you when you were running at max capacity. Because I remember going up there, freaking Chicago is freezing, but your gym had me mesmerized. I went home, obviously I'm a visionary. I went home and implemented some of that stuff immediately, and I was just like, oh, this is gonna be good, you know. So let's talk about your gym a little bit.
Yeah. So we opened initially in like a 1,200 square foot warehouse, tiny, and we were growing by 20 new on ramp members a month. At that time, we were doing group on ramps.
Yep.
We're charging $200 for on ramp, literally 20 a month for 6 months straight. Just, I don't know, crushing it. I must have built a personal brand really well before I knew what I was doing. But so I tried to get the building, the unit next door, which would have brought us to like 3,400. Would have been amazing. They said no. So I immediately started looking elsewhere. The only place I could find was 12,000 square feet. So 6 months in, we were bursting at the seams, literally. I paid a year in advance for that 1,200 square foot space. So
Yep.
year in advance cash, because they wouldn't rent to me because I didn't have any business
Yep.
background, right, or business history. I ended up getting the 12,000 square foot space 6 months later. So by month 7, we were in there. There was another opening of about another 5,000 square feet that had 2 open garage doors into another warehouse.
Yep.
And so month 8, I got the first right of refusal. Month 8, the landlord comes to me and says, "Hey, the neighbor just wants to take over this space, but you have first right of refusal. You don't want that, right?" And I'm like, "Can you give me a day? Can you give me a day?" And so by literally that next day, I decided to take on that extra 5,000 square feet. So it was 17,000 square feet in all by month 8, which was it was crazy. But I'm a maverick, right? I'm a risk taker. I saw the trajectory, and we were just growing like mad, and it was fun. I had a blast doing it.
Yeah.
But that went really well. Started doing gym coaching. It was a really good experience,
Yeah.
and had all the fun stuff, all the cool equipment. Had to fill up 17,000 square feet, so we had the big 57-foot Ninja Warrior rig and
No, I remember that. I remember that.
nitro cold brew on tap, and I just liked experimenting with all the things. We created excursions that did really well. Excursions are just specialty programs. We created the first 90-day journey, or first 100-day journey, I called it at first, and we brought it down to 90. So I just had the opportunity to flex my creative muscle and literally like use my gym as a sandbox and give the lessons to hundreds of other gym owners and the other gym business coaches. So I enjoyed that part of it, right? I did make a mistake, and this is where I learned a lot, which almost cost me everything. I opened a second location for a coach who had all the right makings of being able to run a gym from he was the mayor of everywhere he went. Everybody loved him. He had some other problems, underlying problems that I won't talk about, but I wanted it for him more than he wanted it for himself. He said all of the right things. I told him what I needed. I can't be there. I can't be the face. You got to be the face. Here's what I need you doing. We had all the best systems and processes, and ended up taking on a second space, 10,000 square feet. Invested a ton of money. This was a beautiful new location, amazing. And we literally hit a delay because of zoning for a shower that I never wanted in the gym. That coach wanted a shower, like had to have the damn shower. So we hit a delay, and we had 50 members of the founding members signed up and waiting for us to open. And then we hit a delay with that zoning. So we were 1 month delayed, 2 month delayed, 3 months delayed. All of a sudden we were like 4 months delayed, 5 months delayed. We couldn't open because the shower wasn't even like, the whole thing was torn apart, and the city was really tough. So we started losing those 50 founding members. So by the time we opened, we had like 7 people.
Ooh.
So, failure teaches you way more than success ever will, because it stings and it burns. And man, do you reflect on failure more than success? I would have done a ton of things differently. That was one of the reasons why I got really into these behavioral assessments. So I was like, I really got to figure this out, because like, this is crazy. Could I have avoided this whole mess? And, some of it was, yes, I could have avoided it. Part of it was my own ego. I could have bought a gym of 75 members that was basically on its way out. It was like, 4,000 square feet. It had been there for a while. It just was like teetering, wasn't really thriving. I probably could have bought that for 10 grand.
Yep.
Literally took it over for 10 grand, just bought the equipment, and I would have crushed it. But my ego wanted more, right? And I thought, like, man, this person, he's going to rise to the occasion, and circumstances didn't allow it. But that failure, man, that taught me more than anything. And I'm so grateful for that. And also, like, I think I'm way more useful because I've seen the good and I've seen the bad.
Yeah. No, I think that's one of, for me, I had never had a business partner. I remember coming to you before I even went to Blake talking about Lasso, and you were like, oh, I think it could work, this and that. But I remember you had that bad falling out. So that was in my mind. Then my business partner, he had a partner who was great. So I was like, and then me and Blake became partners. Obviously, it's a match made in heaven, ebony and ivory. But then I remember Blake had a bad falling out with one of his coaches. I was just like, man, this whole partnership thing has to be done right. That's why I love what you do with the hiring and the putting the stuff together, because it could just save you so many headaches long term, right? Like, I'd rather pay for it a little bit up front than deal with something, years down the road, because man, I've seen some stressful partnerships. But Brian, I'm excited to have you as a speaker at the event. We're excited to, you're gonna be hanging out with us in November, Nashville. Hopefully it's not too cold. I don't love the cold weather. But if someone wants to get in contact with you, how do they reach out to you, Brian?
Yep, just either Facebook or readyaimclimb.com.
All right, perfect. That's how you get in contact with them. Guys, and as always, tell a friend to tune in, and we will chat with you guys next week. All right.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the Gym Marketing Made Simple podcast with Blake Ruff and Sherman Merricks. We hope you enjoyed. We believe marketing should increase revenue and not waste money. So book your free call today. Head on over to lassoframework.com. That's lassoframework.com and find the right words, get more customers, and increase your revenue. We'll see you here next time.